The most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy is hands down one of the best set of movies I've ever seen. Caesar's story is deep, meaningful, and heart-wrenching. Just everything you'd want from a trilogy, right? Well, soon we're going to be getting the continuation of that trilogy set 300 years after that story, and I, and many other people, cannot wait to see this. So you can be for sure shocked that I found out about this game. This game that I'm talking about is the Planet of the Apes Last Frontier, a game I bet any money some of you watching this video right now had no idea even existed. I had no idea until one day I was like, I wonder, and yep, there it is. Now, there is also an older version of the Planet of the Apes game and some other like really old ones, but this is specifically the most recent attempt at a Planet of the Apes game. This game was produced by Andy Serkis, who played Caesar inside of the trilogy that we all know and love, but also it was developed by two studios, one called Imaginati Studios that from my knowledge have really only worked on this game and a different Planet of the Apes game that's like a VR game, and also the Imaginarium Studio. And Andy Serkis was one of the main people promoting the game, announcing it at interviews, and it was meant to be a game accompanying War of the Planet of the Apes release, which was the third and final movie. This game is supposedly set just in between Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes, giving us a story to just kind of see what happened maybe potentially in between those movies. Also, another very interesting thing is Andy Serkis actually did motion capture for the game, which isn't very surprising as I said, he played Caesar, but also was one of the main teachers for other actors playing the apes in the movies, and I assume even in the game. Well, the game itself officially released on November 17th in 2017, over 4 months after War released. And the game also only released on PlayStation 4, which is the version I played. And let's just say it doesn't look very good for a PlayStation 4 first launch. And another surprising thing is they released the game officially for Xbox and PC Windows in August 2018, which was like over a year after the PS4 version came out. And from what I've actually seen, there are some small differences in the way the games are laid out on console or PC. Now, the gameplay side of things, it's not really a game. It's an interactive game, but like more than what I'd classify an interactive game being, since some of the ones that come to my head still give you some ability to walk around as a character and just do some other stuff on the side. But in this one, you just sit through essentially a 3-hour long movie where you make decisions on what you're meant to do inside of the story. From what I found out, it almost feels like the consequences really don't have that much of a meaning behind them, since I was able to continuously change my mind with the options they gave me inside of the game. One minute I'm being secretive and the next minute I'm not, and the next minute I'm secretive again. It'll make more sense later. Actually, the game has these awkward silence moments, really reminding me a lot of Heavy Rain at times. The game overall on Metacritic doesn't have the highest of scores from both critics and normal people, so I decided I will play it so you wouldn't have to, and see if there is anything in the story that might be of use for you to know for overall the universe or just the next movie. The game starts off with a narration from Bryn, who is the main character for the apes side. You see, inside of this game you get to control one main ape and one main human, which kinda is a very interesting take on things. He goes over the brief story of this ape tribe. They were all part of Caesar's tribe itself, but at some point separated and moved into a mountain. Somewhere that I don't really know. It's just somewhere, I'm guessing close to San Francisco, I'd assume, but it also reminds me a lot of Texas. I don't really know America itself. But now that the apes live here, there's one big problem standing in their way: winter. And with that, the lack of food. We start with the prologue, where we meet Bryn and his wife Oaka and his son, I think. Oaka tells him to eat, and this is the first choice we have to choose. I know, very serious, and this could have a huge impact on the end of the story, but it lets us know that pointing at a direction, it'll go with that said option. So you basically only get 2 options each time, not much of freedom, and I guess again going back to the consequences side of things, overall I won't be really showing you every single option inside the game because there's quite a lot of them. Like non-stop, they're just giving you an option for the most basic thing sometimes. And Anyway, I chose to eat the food because of course. From here, Owaka points out Bryn's brother, Juno, who seems to have something wrong with his hand. I kinda like this, making an ape have a birth defect and making him stand out from the others. Now here's where those options I told you about that really don't matter kinda come in. You see, Owaka points out that Juno is hungry, and for some reason, the game lets me choose between he is my brother and you come first, which essentially means if I choose she's first, you stay back. And that's exactly what I chose, but he still came up and like, you know, sat around the place, like kicked Owaka away. Like it just felt really weird because this part felt like it should have been more like, well, why is she all of a sudden getting up and getting away? Not the point. I'm getting a bit too far ahead of myself. Juno complains about the mountain having no food, but I chose to defend our father, who is the tribe leader, and chose to live in the mountain itself. Also, here is where Bryn first talks. Prior to this, they were using mainly sign language to communicate, or at least their own sign language, and after that they were both called to their father. But before that, we get brought over to a funeral where we have humans. This is where we get introduced to our other main character, Jess. Turns out this funeral is for their leader, or I guess their main person in charge, and it is actually also Jess's husband. He ended up dying and leaving her and her son. Maria, a different character, also mentions that he died to an illness. I'll assume that this is the virus that wiped out most of the humans, basically made the apes mad. Also, turns out that Jess is now the leader of this small group of people, and now she has like a bunch of new responsibilities, and one of them is brought up to her by Rainy. Now let's quickly talk about Rainy. He's also a different character inside of the game that we will be seeing throughout it, and there's just something off about the voice actor for this game. He goes from the beginning of it being kind of like rough, and I don't know if the actor all of a sudden gained experience, but it feels like he just improved throughout the game. Here, the line delivery is kind of rough, but it gets a whole lot better later on. It's just something that I noticed and I felt like I had to point it out. If you haven't played the game, or if you are planning to play the game, you probably notice it yourself. But basically, Rainy's main complaints is that winter is coming and there's also no food. Kind of crazy that the apes and the humans are struggling with the same scenario. But because, again, I told you I want to be close to my son, I was like, hey, dude, shut up. And I went over to him and then it just kind of went nowhere from there. Look at him waddle. I love orangutans. Well, we're back with the apes, where we get introduced to Bryn's dad and the lovely orangutan Clarence and a third brother. Okay, relax. Well, this third brother's name is Tola, and Khan, their father, tasks them with going to go hunt for food because the mountain is starving. Tola doesn't really like the idea of being limited by hunting areas, since Clarence emphasizes that they have to stay clear of the human territory, or what they assume is human territory. Tola continues to just bicker and complain. If you can't tell, he's kinda giving off minor villain vibes. I surprisingly really connect this character with the way Koba was showing off inside of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, being that ape that just wants the best for other apes, but also just for some reason has it really out for humans. But it also makes sense. It's really delving too deep into it. Just when you think that Tola is done bitching, he finds a new thing to complain about, and that is that Juno has to come with us, and of course he doesn't want him to go. Now, listen, he's not wrong, but man, just shut up. Also, why does he look like that? He's very odd looking for like an ape compared to the other ones. Nothing against him, but just, I don't know, it's like his hairline. It just looks weird, okay? Back with Jess, she meets up with Rainy, who delivers top tier lines about the lack of food. This is interrupted quickly by Maria popping up and calling them over to see something. All of a sudden, there's two riders who have slowly trotted their way up to their town. One of them being injured or something. It just kind of looks like, I don't know. And one that, oh wait, whoa. Is that Arthur Morgan's hat? Why does that look so much like Arthur Morgan's hat? I know it's not the same, but it just really reminds me. Listen, man, you might be on my good side right now. Well, his name is Jacob Willits, and the other one is Oswald Reeves. Haha, it's like Matt Reeves, the director of the other movies. I don't know if that's a reference, but I do dig that. Now, I didn't buy their whole shtick. Like, let's be honest, all of a sudden they trot up and one of them is injured, quote unquote. It doesn't even look like he's injured, but you know what, since the game literally forced me to let them in, and I do still have a soft spot deep inside, I let them in. But they put them inside of quarantine, which is, I don't know, like a jail or something, or you know, to wait and see if they have the illness, I assume. Back with the apes once again, they were prepping to get going, and I got this really nice moment with Juno that let me hear his voice.
Today, Juno hunts!
And oh, that is not what I expected it to sound like. And Clarence kept on pushing us to not go hunt in the human territory, and oh my god, is that Kong from the hit game? What? I know it's not, again, but why are these two things so similar to one another? This gorilla looks weird. His name is Brutus. The place that Clarence didn't want us to go was the plains, but Tola, after Clarence walked away, just said something bad about him, which I defended. He's wise, okay? He might be old and chunky, but he is wise. And Tola still says that we will hunt in the human territory no matter what. And so, Chapter 1 begins. The difference with PS4 versions and PC from what I saw with people online is that there is like a screen at the end of each chapter which shows you on like what level you are with each of the characters. That's not on the PS4 version. So the apes decide to climb down the mountain and see a silo in the distance, which gets Juno panicking because that means humans are near. As they make their way further, it's not looking good until they actually find a ranch with cattle and of course people. As Bryn, I try my best to not go down there and especially not even hurt the humans because Tola is obsessed with this idea, and also Juno keeps on panicking and starts yelling, which slowly starts alerting the cows, but thankfully I was able to cool him down. Since the game really wanted me to go down there, we ended up going, and the game was like, oh, you have this quick time event, which essentially means inside the game that press X if you want to do a certain action. In this scenario, it was shoot the humans. Of course I'm not gonna do that, that's just stupid. But even because I didn't do that, turns out that Brutus bashes through a wall and literally kills one of them. Now the other dude starts blasting his gun around the place, and because I don't want any of the other apes to get hurt, I decided to shoot him, which I instantly regretted. Thankfully, he still managed to get away, but what the hell just happened? Why is everyone shooting? Why did Brutus kill him? I'm telling you, they just really have it out for them. Since that guy got away, he managed to make his way to the town where he was on the floor begging for help, and also he let them all know about the ape attack, which everybody including Jess didn't really believe him because I presume they didn't know apes were really smart. And so chapter 2 begins, and this chapter starts off with an ape skull. Turns out they found some stuff in the guy's bags and one of them was an ape skull, and both Willits and Reeves revealed that they are ape hunters. They're like bounty hunters, but for apes. I kind of dig this idea. It's really cool to see humans taking on the task of going and hunting down apes. That's actually a really cool concept. They basically revealed that they came here because they're hunting down apes that they've been tracking for a while. They also updating them overall on the idea of apes being smart after the illness came around. Now what's suspicious about this is because they say that they thought they didn't have any apes in this town as a problem, but they're still here overall. I don't know if they treated this as like a checkpoint or just to make sure there's no apes, but that is a bit suspicious if you ask me. Now they keep on giving you this option of, hey, we can help you out, but because I just don't like them overall or don't trust them, I kept on going for the options to not do anything, and to make those characters look a bit pathetic, they all of a sudden are like, oh no, we'll actually help you out. In no way during this conversation did I personally feel like the characters were kind of hinting at the idea that they really want to help out, but also this is what I'm talking about, where the options feel like they really don't have any consequences, and no matter what you do, the story needs to kind of still keep going, or they don't even have options to be like, well, okay, let's say if the ape hunters don't help you out in this scenario, what would happen if they didn't, you know? Why isn't that an option? But whatever. The one priority that Jess had was that she wanted to have control, because of course they're gonna help us out figure out what the hell is happening with these apes. Now, from here, we see what is actually happening with the apes, and they've delivered the food. By food, I mean they took like 2 cows up to the mountain, and as you can guess, it doesn't go over very well. They might have delivered it, but it is very suspicious. So they get called up to their father, where he continuously asks questions, which means that I had to non-stop choose different options to protect it. This is what I mentioned in the intro, where I was being secretive and then I wasn't, and I was, and then I wasn't. Essentially, the game kept on pushing me to reveal the truth, so I was like, fine, yes, we didn't go hunting for these cattle in the mountain, and I told him the truth. Khan surprisingly takes it like better than I would have expected, and his main rule now is that he wants to lead, which is honestly for the best. It's very interesting to see these parallels between the humans and the apes. I do like it. Jess and the others went actually to the ranch now to find the body. They were able to break down the full situation since, you know, they are the ape hunters, and decided to move up to the mountain to follow the tracks that the apes left behind. Also, something I never mentioned, there is a lot of slow shots inside the game, and we get so many of them inside of this. Just nothing happens apart from just scenery shots. Very filling like. While they're slowly climbing up and having small conversations, it's revealed that the apes are actually keeping up with them and tracking them themselves. And Juno, for some odd reason, decides to climb over the humans and onto a branch that didn't even, to me, look like it would support him, and he ended up falling down, revealing that they're all there. A shootout instantly starts, and the game gave me the option to shoot, but I didn't want to do that, so I never shot again. No matter what he did, she was still protected. After this long just back and forth shooting, the apes escape, and it turns out that Khan was actually shot. He wasn't going to be able to make it, so he tells Tola that he now has to be the leader, and unfortunately passes away. This was actually a pretty emotional scene, and I did really like the acting in this. So they brought the body back, and Tola started to blame Juno for their father's death. Again, has every reason, but listen man, you shouldn't be that hard on him. And also, I really don't think that Tola is the best option to be the leader. Back at the town, Jess is asked about what happened, which she of course tried her best to say. They had to quickly start preparing just in case the apes decided to come back and attack the humans now, since you know, them probably going into their territory and attacking them wasn't very good. Back with the apes, they had a funeral for Khan. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a lot of back and forth, which allowed Clarence and Owaka to talk some sense into Bryn about the whole situation with Tola taking over. They're clearly the smartest characters in this game right now. Tola himself has come up with a plan to go and attack the humans. He is a very stuck-up ape. He does have reasons, but also, I don't think this is the best thing to do. Very similar, again, to Koba. What? Dun dun dun. As he told everything to Bryn to prepare, he also emphasized that we needed to bring Clarence with us. He really just doesn't like him, does he? And that is definitely a bit of a suspicious thing, and I feel like he might want him dead. I feel bad for the big little guy. From here, chapter 3 begins. They all make their way over to the town at night. I actually wondered how they could have like known where this town was the first time I played, but after reviewing this footage, it's kind of cool detail. Number one, they probably do already know where the humans are just to be safe, but also you can see the shine from the town itself in the distance. The game gets a plus for me for this one. Just before they go down into the town, once again, Clarence is one of the only sane characters that tries his best for everyone not to go down there. Can I quickly also interrupt? This game is really pretty at times. Like the character models in this are very impressive for a 2017 game. Not saying that 2017 had really bad models, but for this, they really put in their work into these. And also the lighting. Mwah. Pretty solid. Bryn tells Juno and Clarence to stay put as he doesn't want them to be hurt, and he makes his way into the town stealthily. Here we finally get the two main characters together, or well, at least around one another, and they kind of do this transition where I all of a sudden start choosing options for Jess. I was about to say I start playing as Jess, and she has a conversation with Mark back and forth about his dad and so on and so forth, which all of a sudden gets interrupted when the lights turn off and then gunshots follow. Here Jess went down to the ground with a flare gun, put out some fires, and then we get this shot of her looking around. Again, something that just really overstays its welcome. I get it, you're trying to make it emotional, but something that made me struggle to get kind of into the scene is how rough the sound design in this game is. It's really quiet with some very subtle gunshots in the background that just needed something more, and I can't really explain what it was. Oh, now we're back at the mountain. Well, that was abrupt. Bryn is concerned about both Clarence and Juno, and he finds Juno is having a bit of a moment and reveals that Clarence is gone? No, my boy Clarence is gone. After Bryn learns this, he goes over to Tola and lets him know that we need to go and get Clarence, which Tola of course doesn't want to do. He then gave this speech that they were all going to prepare for humans, as of course now they're expecting them to retaliate. Basically back and forth stupid war stuff. And the tension was for sure rising. Owaka was trying her best also to convince Bryn to become the true leader. I swear, Clarence and Noaka, top tier characters right now. Since Tola is clearly not mentally stable and only wants the humans to die instead of, actually take care of the apes and not sacrifice more of them. Back at the town, Jess gets called over to see Reeves, and while it's with Clarence, he's alive. They take him inside of the town and start to interrogate him to get him to talk. Clarence, of course, doesn't actually speak, or well, the game never reveals that he can speak, so he can't actually tell them anything since, he just uses sign language. And it's also revealed that the reason they're so brutal on him now is because Reeves' daughter got killed by an ape they interrogated and weren't hard enough on. That seems very specific. By constantly telling them to stop, obviously I can't see my boy get beat around like that. They do. So they have a meeting where they're trying to figure out a plan of how to go about killing the apes. There was this part where Maria was really trying to be smart about the situation and take their time instead of going in with guns blazing, and we had to vote. Me and her had a very awkward moment since we were the only ones that chose to, do a recon first. And well, I guess we're going guns blazing then. But Maria has something to show Jess first. She brings her back to Clarence, who is now locked up, where she shows her that he can actually talk. Well, with the sign language. He explains to her and Maria that apes only want peace and food for the winter. Jess slowly, kind of over time, sees that maybe apes aren't the bad ones in this situation, and even Mark walks in, and I kind of made the bad decision. I thought maybe this would be the bad decision of telling Mark about this, but he also took it better than I would have expected. So now we're on the hunt, and they find the entrance to the mountain where the apes are. It's surprisingly empty and clearly shows that Tola wasn't messing around when he said they're going to be ready. I'm offered with two options. Go in now through the front or go around. The only disadvantage was that if we were to go around, it would be nightfall, and Rainy did make a good point that you don't really want to be around here at night. So I thought maybe going in now would be the better option. It wasn't. The apes turned out to be up above on top of the mountain, or at least the entrance, and rained down spears from above on them. They started a chase through the caves, as Mark said he knew a different way out, as his father back in the day when he was alive, and I guess the apes were in here, they used to come here and do stuff. I don't really know. And then I got to see this beautiful thing. Look at all that booty. Mwah. Bootylicious. Jess has a moment where she quickly has to choose between a gun and a spear, and I went with the gun because of course, but it had no ammo, so she still inevitably went with the spear. Like, okay, I understand, but also, what? After more attempts at escaping, turns out Mark was just gone, and Rainy was really desperate on getting out, so he grabbed Jess and got away. Turns out that we also got to play as Bryn, and we were actually the ones that caught him. So now they have Mark. Can I just say that supposedly Rainy, Jess, and others jumped off of a cliff, or at least a waterfall? I have no idea how deep or how far this waterfall went, but that was ridiculously risky if you ask me. Well, chapter 4 begun, and they're all fine now? Okay. Maria is giving out to them both about the whole thing, and we get another one of those, hey, come check this out. Turns out Reeves and Willis are hanging Clarence. So you can guess I tried everything in my power to stop them from doing that. It was difficult. She really didn't want to stop them. Even though I tried to choose those options, I don't like these bozos that just showed up and are throwing this shit around. It's okay, Clarence. Don't worry. Back with the apes, they were now interrogating Mark, and Mark was able to let them know that Clarence was actually still alive. Yay, right? So with this information, Bryn suggested the idea that they could trade for Clarence. And then we got this scene where Bryn just non-stop said peace, like over and over.
Peace! 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 Peace!
From here, we cut away back to Maria and Jess, who are having a conversation near Tom's grave, and then Bryn shows up out of nowhere and just fully grabs a gun and is at a standoff with Jess, but he's here for good reason, because he wants to suggest the idea of trading Clarence for Mark, because he let her know that he is still alive, and he told her to meet at a metal bridge. After this, Jess said that she'll consider, and with Rainy and the ape hunters, they had a conversation about it. Something that surprised me is that the ape hunters were like, hey, do it. But what they will do is bring over their own men Yeah, there is of course more of them. I knew there was something suspicious about them. Then again, I am trying to make Jess be the better person in this situation. I told them not to bring them. So the next day, they all met up at this metal bridge and traded. Look at Clarence wobble again. I love him. Turns out the apes were actually not doing the nicest thing because they might have raided Mark and Clarence, but turns out Tola still had his own idea and they were trying to ambush them from before until the humans actually attacked with explosives. What? Two sides actually not being nice to one another, or at least the people who think they're in charge and the ape that is in charge? Dun dun dun. From here, a lot of stuff happens, so here's my best explanation. Mark falls off bridge. Clarence falls off bridge. From here, Jess says she has to go look for Mark even though she shouldn't. She slowly makes her way down, making some very interesting noises. Turns out Clarence, my boy, is actually dead. From here, Tola gives Bryn two options. Go rescue Juno or go rescue Brutus. Why the hell would I ever rescue it? So I went for Juno. While he was trying to rescue him, found a machine gun, which he started blasting around the place, and then noticed Jess, who was trying to rescue Mark, who ended up falling underneath an ice river. Well, this is going great. The game again gave me an option of shoot her or shoot the ice. Of course I didn't shoot her. So from here, a hole opened up for Jess to be able to rescue Mark. And here is, once again, another one of those scenes that I'm pretty sure are just in a game to fill it up to be 3 hours long. Deep inside, I think this game just had to have a specific runtime, and 3 hours was the mark, because the game is like 3 hours and a few minutes, not even like a lot. So this is where my suspicions come in, because the amount of time that it takes her to revive Mark, which of course, spoiler alert, he is alive, took forever. And don't even get me started about the shot that once she rescues him, the kind of pan away to show everything that's happening, but not much is happening in the background, and again, the sound design doesn't help it. This scene, in no way did I feel like, wow, what an emotional scene. Even though the actress for Jess did all she had in her, because that was really good acting, it's just everything else kind of ruined it for me. After this, they headed back to the town, and of course, Reeves and Willits took this opportunity to take over, and it took them a lot of convincing to let them in, and what they did, they said they can be inside the town, but they have to go through quarantine. Oh, and also Maria all of a sudden is just gone, so this is all going so good. Back with the apes now, Bryn and Owaka talk to one another about Tola again, and more on the losses that they had. Just so many apes are dying. I finally decided to agree with Owaka that I should become the leader, but not just yet, because back with Tola, turns out that they caught a traitor ape. Hey! Those are the ones from Warrior Planet Apes. This is a nice reference. See, it kind of fills in the stuff in between. I assume they might even be the Colonel's apes, I think, right? Unless other humans decided to, side with the apes. It's getting a bit confusing. This ape's name was Stinky. That is a top tier name. And he told them the whole situation, that he is now working for the humans and that they are there with a bunch of soldiers and they want to hunt down all of the apes that are inside of this tribe. So Tola told Bryn that he has to take Stinky so that he can show him where the humans are at. And so chapter 5 has begun. Stinky showed Bryn a camp and ran off. Alright, see a Stinky, which after Bryn's investigation finds Maria locked up in a cage, who has been put there, I'm assuming, by Willits and Reeves. Bryn confronted her and had like this whole conversation about, humans bad, apes bad, blah blah blah, why did they do that? And it all resulted in them actually kind of coming to conclusion and being like, hey, we need to stop these humans together. So the game gave me an option to leave her behind or rescue her, and of course I chose to rescue my girl Maria. Now we're back with Rainy and Jess, who are in quarantine, and surprise surprise, they get rescued by Maria. And also Bryn is here. The gang has finally formed. But before they fully broke them out, Willits came in and they had this like classic villain story of, I am doing this because blah blah blah. The reason why he's doing this, he just kind of wants to take over the town. It's the weirdest motivation ever, but whatever. He just wants to bring over the people on the train, or at least the enemy soldiers and enemy apes, into the town. I don't know why this is the motive, but you know what? Whatever. It works. So after he walked off, they finally let them out and they agreed to work together and that they needed to stop them before they could get in. They talked about having explosives and they had to prepare. So Jess and Maria went off to fully prep. Rainy prepared the horses, and I assume Bryn went back to his tribe. Here also, when Maria and Jess went over for the explosives, they got confronted by Reeves, who somehow is here. I assume he noticed in time that Maria was gone and he came over here, or he just saw them. Then again, I don't really know how he all of a sudden is here, since I'm pretty sure, you know, the train is quite the distance away. Doesn't matter. Anyway, they get confronted. He's holding Jess with a knife. I attempted to break out a few times until it finally worked out. She's all bedazzled, dazzled, and bang, she shot a gun and got him. Well, rip bozo, I guess. There goes one. Only one more to go. Back with the apes, Bryn confronted Tola and told him the truth of what is coming. That war is actually going to happen. Bryn had bad news on top of this, that the apes have to fight with humans. Of course, as per usual, Tola did not like that. So Bryn finally had it in him and stood his ground and said he will now lead, which started a big fight between them. This fight was actually impressive. It took a pretty long time and they fought all around the place inside of this mountain cave. Now, there isn't really much to say apart from, hey, they threw themselves here, they threw themselves there, quick time event, this, that, until just as Bryn nearly lost, because it was kind of like a one side for one side, they were all winning, they were all losing, Juno, the Chad, jumped on top of Tola and stabbed him with a spear. That was definitely not what I expected him to ever do, but with that, Bryn bit off Tola's ear, or at least bit him, and Tola finally gave up. He lost, and now Bryn is the true leader. Back with Jess and the others, who were finally at the tracks that they wanted to blow up, were suddenly attacked by Willits and his men. Now, the reason Willits is doing this is because he actually did find Reeves's body, so, you know, he's not very happy. The game had this thing where they were like at a kind of like a gunpoint, but it was weird because he had Mark in one hand and then the Jess in the other, and the game was like shoot or surrender. Of course I shot him and I killed him, so there goes Willits. Well, now I guess all that's left is just to stop that train, which guess what? They did. They blew up the train, and all the people that fell out, at least the ones that remained after the train crash, whatever you want to call that, all the apes, all the people, were now left to be attacked by the apes, who are now led by our boy Bryn. And with that, the game just kind of ends. Well, we get this really long shot again that really overstayed its welcome, and then just kind of like a conclusion to everyone that it's, at the end of the day, a bit of a happy ending. But no, it's not. Clarence is dead. Like, what? Was there any way of keeping him alive? Come on. So yeah, if you were wondering, I did, I guess, get a happy ending according to the trophies. And now I kind of want to briefly talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you want to look at it that way. I might have really, I guess, quote unquote, shit on the game during this video, and that's just because it's not perfect. The 50% or whatever you want to call it that it has a Metacritic from people, or even on like Steam, is really understandable. This isn't a top tier game. It's definitely not a game that you have to play, because the next movie is literally set 300 years from the time of War of the Planet of the Apes, and this takes place in between Dawn and War. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's just something to, I guess, get that itch out that I was like, I want more Planet of the Apes, but I've been waiting for years. Now, I'm gonna quickly talk about the issues. First of all, the music is weird. I get it, there's a composer and he put a lot of work into it, but it just felt off. It didn't feel good. Might have been good for any other project, but for this one, to me, it just sounded odd. The choices inside of the game, just two, and overall the ones that they gave me were really lame, and I didn't really like them. And some of the voice acting, as I mentioned, was pretty stale, but for most part, it was pretty good. And the graphics for a PS4 game were pretty rough. They struggled sometimes to load in. And of course, the story. I feel like they should have just done something more, attempted something different, not something that I'm like, oh, so this is just exactly, almost exactly like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It just didn't have creativity almost. It felt very safe. Now for the good side, it's a Planet of the Apes game. Come on. It's good, of course it is, to a certain extent. I'll take anything that involves apes taking over the planet. I just love it. I love the concept, I love the idea. And even though this didn't really do anything super different, it still expanded on the idea of this new universe. Introduced the idea of ape hunters, which I will get into that in a while, but I don't know if they can really do much with that information right now, since again, 300 years from now, from what we know, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, humans are now very stupid, or at least they're expected to be pretty stupid. And the last one that I feel like is worth mentioning is the co-op aspect of it. The way it works is you can have up to 4 people kind of choosing what to do, and I tried it myself, and if you like choose equally different sides, that the game is like, you need to find an ultimatum. Makes sense why, but I guess if you wanted to play this with a family member or your boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, whatever, you can. It's a 3-hour long movie. It's not that long if you look at some of the movies movies that are out there. And lastly, the thing that I want to say is this game could have really been so much more. And what I hope that they will do someday, because I think it's a genius idea, is actually make a full-on normal game. It could work. Make it almost like God of War, but not God of War. I'm just using that as an example of an open world, but with limitations. Put in a lot of work into the story. I think them having the option of maybe taking a TV series or doing a slight in between movie, in between the stories that we're getting now with War of the Planet of the Apes and Kingdom, there's 300 years to work in between there. A lot of stuff could have happened, and I think taking it into the gaming world could really work. Obviously, I doubt anyone will really watch this video this far, and if you do, that is absolutely incredible. And if you're someone that is working on a game and maybe wanted to see a potential of something, it could really work. Like, let's be honest, I think a Planet of the Apes game that actually is a playable game and not an interactive game, I can see the potential in that. And overall, it's not the worst. It's just kind of meh, you know? Meh out of 10. If you want a review. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I just quickly want to use this opportunity to thank you all so freaking much. We are over 800 subscribers right now, which is absolutely insane. We're super close to hitting our goal of 1,000 subscribers, which is remarkable. And I'm hoping to kind of evolve this channel more and more. Keep the same style, but try to do better with each upload. Right now, I'm in a pretty sticky situation. I'm about to finish my last year of college. So after that, we are going crazy with this channel. I'm playing more games, of course, because I love games. And I love also playing games that are very bizarre. This was a bizarre game. I've never heard of it before. Again, I doubt most of you have. If you have watched this far into the video, hey, what's up? That was weird. Thank you so much. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Yeah, bye.